Hello,
Hi, how are
how
you?
are you?
I'm well, thank you.
In this wild time, how are you getting on?
Yeah, it's a miracle I managed to connect here.
I'm
First time.
delighted. Yes, you done it. It was a very smooth landing. Congratulations.
Yeah, first time on Instagram.
Welcome, welcome. I'm delighted to have you. I'm delighted to have
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you.
So, how have you been getting on? What's your schedule like during quarantine? We're all trying to kind of do our bit and keep busy.
It's to tell you the truth, Lydia, I can't believe how busy it has been.
Hmm.
It was never this busy before the virus. It's just been non-stop, and the team has been quite remarkable how dedicated they have been to their work, and everybody's been working in isolation, but there's been no slacking off. We've achieved so much in this lockdown. It's been untrue. I think we're going to come out of the other side of it a lot stronger than we were before. Um,
Absolutely. I think for a lot of people, it's kind of it's time to catch up. It's time to sort of refocus, reflect, and I think I'm not surprised by people like yourselves, like IMMAF, capitalizing on this time.
yeah, we're getting plenty of time sitting behind the desk instead of hopping on and off planes and being here, there, and everywhere. So I think to have this time where you can just sit back a little bit more and reflect on everything that we're doing and seeing how we can improve things and revisiting our different policies and procedures. We've put together a lot of different committees. We've got 15 committees now,
Wow.
which involves about 80 people. And we've got all of them on our new Teams, Microsoft Teams platform. So they're able to have meetings and discuss things and share documents and develop policies and so on. The board of directors have been having meetings as well using the Teams, Microsoft Teams. We've just got the organisation registered in Switzerland, which has been a piece of work that I've been working on for 6 months now, since it was approved at our General Assembly last November. We're working we've been making a lot of efforts with the WADA, which you may have heard. We've been trying to get to become a signatory of the World Anti-Doping Agency.
Hmm.
That's been a struggle that we've been involved in the last 3-4 years. But I'm pleased to say we've been making some really good progress this last couple of weeks. And we've had some dialogue with them, and I think there's a real willingness on their side to try and accommodate us.
Absolutely. I mean, the work that's been done behind the scenes and what's been done up until this point has been phenomenal. Not just in terms of sport regulation and safety of the sport, and then also the European Championships, the World Championships. So looking after the real kind of the core of the amateur end of the sport. But for somebody that doesn't really know too much about IMMAF, or they see the logos, they see the kind of press that comes off the back of the championships and different things, how would you explain it to the casual fan?
Well, I think most people that are involved in MMA would have heard of the UFC,
Hmm.
and they would have seen what they do in it, and that's fabulous, and it's you know fantastic sport, and it's well represented by what they put out. But that's the top end. That's like the Premiership
Hmm.
end of the sport. And what hadn't happened was anybody developing what was happening at the grassroots end of the sport. And that essentially is what IMMAF has been doing. We have been bringing in new members. We've got over 100 members now globally across all 5 continents, which means Oceania, Africa, Asia, Europe, Pan America. And that membership is continuing to grow. And we're rolling out coach education programs for all of the coaches globally, and we're doing all of that online now because we're in the lockdown. So we're probably reaching more people now with the
Yeah.
educational programs than we were before. Mark Goddard works with us on the regulatory side of things. He's as you know, probably the #1 referee in the world.
Hmm.
And he's doing a lot of the referee training online now as well. So all of that sort of educational side of the sport hadn't been done by anyone before. And that's really important from a safety perspective. I mean, I don't know if you have children, but if you take them to do a martial arts or any sport, I'm sure you want them to be trained and instructed by someone who actually knows what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And they've had some first aid training. They've had a enhanced police check to make sure they're not a paedophile. But they should have also a minimum technical level of competencies as well. So I think that's the kind of thing that we are working on. We are very much trying to build the sport from the bottom end of the triangle, the bottom end of the pyramid. The top end is already taken care of, but nothing is happening down here. And and what's happening now is a lot of children are now starting to come into the sport of MMA. And so it's really important that we protect them and make sure that they're safe.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's not just in MMA, it's in all sports, isn't it? The youth are the ones who are so crucial to it, because one, they're the supporters, but also they're the future of the sports. And without them, we can't ever progress.
Correct.
The amount or the mass of sort of achievements that IMMAF have achieved over the years and in such a short space of time has been phenomenal, in terms of the brand, in terms of what's been, as I said, achieved, and, what we see it as what it is today. What do you put that down to? I mean, because as you said, you have got a good team, but it's a small team, but you seem to get a lot of work done and a lot of good work done. So what would you put that down to?
I put it down to the fact that we've got a very dedicated team, and they work hard. There's no one within our team that's sort of watching the clock. I mean, they're working at all hours. It's not a 9-to-5 job. This job is 24/7. And a lot of my communication, a lot of the best work I do is in the middle of the night. I'm working at 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And all of the staff are like that. They can be left alone and to get on with their work. They're very dedicated, very committed. They love the sport. They're fanatical about the sport. And they want to see it successful. They want to see it grow. And I mean, I've worked in other organizations before. I was chairman of British Judo, for example, for 10 years. And we had a staff team of 75 full-time people. Wow. 75, which is incredible. I mean, obviously, all funded by UK Sport or by Sport England. But the problem is with a big organisation like that, and with a lot of people working, I'm sure a lot of them working very hard, is that people can also kind of hide within that system as well, and not be particularly productive. So I think in a smaller team, people take more responsibility. And if there's an issue, you know exactly who to go to solve that issue. Because everything is departmentalized, and everybody's got their lanes that they need to work in. And I think the other thing we do is we communicate really well as a team. I mean, during this lockdown especially, it's been the level of communication has increased quite dramatically. We'll be talking to each other twice a week, and those meetings can go on for a couple of hours. So I mean, the beauty of it is everybody in the team knows what the other people are doing. So you can get that fertilization of information, and no one can say, "Oh, I didn't know about this," and when was this decided, without me knowing about it. So I think it works really well. And we also have the support of the federations, not forget as well. Federations, they're amazing people. They're all working on a voluntary basis for the most part, and they've done a tremendous job at their local level. Given the limited resources that they have. Out of the 100 federations, we've probably got about 40 or 45 of those that are already recognised by Olympic Committee or by their high sports authority, sports ministry, or for example. And that's really important to us, because when we're trying to get recognition by the Olympic sports umbrella organisations, that's one of the criteria, that you need to have 40 recognized federations, and that's how they define recognized. So you could go there to them and say, I've got 200 members, but it wouldn't matter if none of those were recognized by their Olympic committee or by their sports ministry.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, on the back of that, then, Densign, there's the new campaign for MMA as a sport, and you have the social media campaigns that IMMAF have been rolling out, and you know, the kind of spreading the awareness, I suppose. The aim to see MMA as end up as an Olympic sport. Obviously, that's something that anyone who's a fan or passionate about sport, that would be the ultimate dream, I think, to see it being played out in the Olympics. For yourself, you obviously come from an Olympic background. So do you kind of find that your peers or the people that you're kind of working with, that there's a level of respect there because you've been to the Olympics, you know what's involved, you know what it's like to be the athlete, and you know you've had a massive achievements yourself within judo. So has that been important for you in your role within IMMAF?
I think it has. I think all the experiences that I've had, not only as an athlete but as an administrator in sport as well, has really helped me a lot. I've worked in the International Judo Federation as well, and I think I've carried all that experience across with me, which has been appreciated and welcomed by the majority of people, but it's also been a source of pushback by other people who see I'm still seen as sometimes as an outsider, trying to bring ideas from another sport into MMA. And obviously there are some people in MMA that still, in my view, are looking backwards, and they really, you know, MMA was considered to be this kind of underground movement, and I think they want to keep it there to some extent.
Yeah.
So when you start talking about governance and regulation, it's something that's completely alien to them, and it's almost as if, well, why does MMA need that? We're not like that. We're something that's, you know, from the ground, and you know, we don't need all that modern stuff that you're talking about, that other sports have to comply with or to be accepted as credible. But actually the truth is we do, because it's the only way to survive in this modern age. If you want to get insurance, for example, if you're not well governed as a sport, which insurance company is going to be interested in providing insurance for you? If your coaches aren't regulated, obviously that presents a risk that they're not prepared to take on. Because if anybody can just get up tomorrow morning and decide they're going to declare themselves an MMA coach and start running a gym and teaching classes, that is not safe, obviously. And that's not credible. And in terms of and if I'm an insurance company, I'm not touching that with a barge pole.
Absolutely.
You know, I want to know that the referees are all certified. I want to know that all the coaches are all certified, the judges, the cup men, all the way across the board. I mean, and also the coaches that are representing national teams, that are bringing teams to our championships. They need to be. We need to be sure that they're also qualified and are doing what they're supposed to do. Because obviously, if they're not, then there's a risk to the event.
Would you say that is the biggest challenge that IMMAF as a group faces, is that pushback and kind of trying to get people to see that this is the way forward and this is how we progress the sport?
I think the majority get it. The majority really do get it. We've got a vocal minority who are very active on social media. But I think the majority of our members are very, very supportive and understand what we're talking about, because when they go to their government for support, and it might be financial support, the first thing the government's going to say is, well, you know, let's look at your governance. Are you, you know, how are you accountable? Are you a democratic body? Do you have elections? Do you have annual general meetings? Do you have audited accounts? Do you have a bank? Do you even have a bank account? You know, and you know, how many members do you have? Or is this just a one-man band? You know, are you an organization that truly represents the vast majority of MMA that's happening in your territory?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, why would we be interested in looking at you and recognizing you and giving you funding? So it's really important. It's critically important. And if the federation wants to grow, then and grow their membership, then people that join that federation want to know that it is credible, and that it has got all the correct procedures and policies in place to keep people safe. They're running safe events and they're following the IMMAF medical protocols, for example. The referees are qualified. They're not just picked off the street, you know, because, you know, if you watch boxing, I know you do a lot of boxing stuff on here.
Yeah.
Look at the problems that boxing has had with judging and refereeing, to the extent that the International Federation now are not even allowed to run their own Olympic boxing event.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and judging is a big issue that has been identified by the IOC that they want to see rectified within that sport before they can even begin to recognize them again.
Absolutely.
And we don't want that to happen to us. We want to try and learn the lessons from what the other sports have done badly and try and avoid that. We don't want to make the same mistakes. We want
Definitely. And, you know, that's why it's so good to have you on and so good to talk through exactly, you know, what IMMAF does and the aims and the goals and the issues and the problems that have arose, because I think it's good for the casual fan to see that it's not just, I mean, that there's just a preconception of, you know, oh, you just set up an organization and that's it, and there's not much to it, and everyone just gets along and goes along with everything that's put out, and there's not much that goes into it, I suppose. So it's good to have a bit of transparency and to see and to hear about all the work that's been done behind the scenes and all the little details that have to go along with that. In terms of the recognition, in terms of getting the sport to where you want it to be, how close are we?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we've made applications to the Global Association of International Sports Federations, which is like that umbrella organization. They're almost like the gatekeepers to the International Olympic Committee. So the function they perform is kind of a vetting process. So first you have to join them before you have any chance at all of being recognized by the International Olympic Committee. So we made an application to them 4 years ago in 2016. And it took several months before we got any answer back from them, and they rejected our application without giving any reasons for that. And then in the meantime, while we were in the process of deciding what to do, they created something that they called observation status, it's almost like a holding position because they say they've got all these sports trying to become members of GASEF, and they need some system to try and control that and to kind of look where they are, all these sports. Some of them are good, some of them are maybe not so good. And so they've got a list, they've got criteria that need to be met to be a member of the GASEF. And sports that don't reach the bar that they've set to be a member could be in this holding position of having observation status, which would give them time to be ready to become a full member and go to their Congress to be voted in. So we actually feel that we are better than observation status, but because our full membership was rejected, we decided that observation would be a lower bar and we'd get that quite easily. But that hasn't proven to be the case, because that was rejected as well. I mean, the only thing we don't have, which is in the criteria, that one of the prerequisites is you have to be a signatory of WADA. Now, WADA have said to us, that's the World Anti-Doping Agency, they've said to us, as soon as GASEF give you observation status, we will automatically make you a signatory. So, of course, GASEF don't want to do that because they don't want us to have the final bit of the jigsaw that we need to get in. And obviously, a lot of the pushback that's coming from within GASEF is from the other 15 combat sports that are already existing members of GASEF, who see threat to their own existence, actually. And maybe even there's a possibility that we would become recognized by the IOC and they would lose their position within the Olympic Games competition program. So I think there's a fear among a lot of the other combat sports that are already inside GASEF that MMA will somehow overshadow them. And I think there's commercial considerations as well. How much media that MMA is getting, the fan base that we've got, the following we have. And I think that these are some of their big concerns. Obviously, if you're part of the Olympic program, I mean, the Olympic dividend is millions of dollars that sport get that are in the Olympic Games program. And so, you know, no sport would want to see that put in jeopardy. And I think that's the reason why we're seeing this massive pushback against MMA.
It is sad to hear, isn't it? I mean, and it's not just within MMA or within the kind of Olympic grouping. It is something that we see in professional sports or in the kind of the Olympic end of sports in general, is that money and, you know, power maybe and different things are massive factors, and it's so separated from the actual sport, which is very sad to see or sad to hear.
Well, it's crazy because the message I'm trying to give to them is, look, we're not a threat. We want to work with the other combat sports. We're part of the martial arts family. And I would say an integral part of the martial arts family. Actually, MMA, I think, benefits the other sports. And they're not going to lose people. They actually gain people because people who do MMA are also participating in other combat sport activities and developing their skills in their box. If they want to become better at boxing, they'll be going and doing boxing. If they want to develop their grappling, they'll probably go and do a bit of wrestling or a bit of judo, whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't see that MMA is actually detrimental to them. I think it actually adds value to them. It's bringing attention to them. And whenever a champion from one of their sports becomes a champion in UFC, it's more publicity for their sport. So I don't know why they don't get it. So this is really the message. And what they also need to understand, and critically important, is that it's really difficult for us to regulate MMA without recognition, because then you're relying on people's goodwill. You're relying on people to voluntarily follow your instructions or your advice or your recommendations. And of course, there are many people out there who will want to cut corners, you know, because following regulation does cost money. There's no two ways about that. When we put an event on, you know, it's expensive. You know, it's a 7-day event. You need your medical team there the whole time. You need paramedics there the whole time. That whole medical side is really well set up, but it's expensive. And then you've got the drug testing. And we know that a lot of organizations and private promotions are doing no drug testing because that costs money. You know, and maybe they don't. And we always have ambulances at the venue in case anything happens, and the event is always taking place near a hospital. So if anything happens, the ambulance can get there really quickly. And those are the sort of things we have to think about. We're doing the pre-fight medicals, the post-fight medicals on the athletes. They all have to be medically cleared before they compete and provide their blood works. And that is costing the athletes money. You know, to go through that safe MMA process, it costs them. In Ireland, where I believe you are, it's even more strict because the athletes in Ireland have to have an annual brain scan, mandatory. Otherwise, they're not allowed to participate in any events there. So, in our competitions, any athletes that are knocked out or stopped automatically have to go for a brain scan, and we cover those costs as well. So it's difficult for us to regulate when we're not recognised. I mean, we've had situations where, for example, and this is the argument I'm carrying over to WADA as well about us not being a signatory, because we've had athletes that have had positive tests and they've been able to bypass the sanction that we've imposed by turning professional, because professional promotions don't have to pay any heed to anything that we've imposed. We've had other situations where athletes weren't able to get therapeutic use exemptions for medication that they taking for genuine health issues. So they were prescribed by their doctors drugs for their condition, which were on the ban list, which you can use if you have this therapeutic use exemption. But in some countries where MMA is not recognized, it's impossible for an athlete to get the therapeutic use exemption. But if they get a positive test, we don't have any choice. Even if we believe that they had a genuine reason for using that prohibited substance, we still don't have any choice. Because there's a strict liability on the athlete for what goes into their bodies. If they get a positive test, we just have to treat it as a positive test. And if the WADA code says that athlete has to be banned for 4 years, then we have to ban them for 4 years. And that happened on a couple of occasions. So that's why this thing about regulation is so important to us. And that's why we're fighting so hard to get it.
Absolutely. But, we're obviously talking about the different, the positives and the negatives of what's happening. But overall, can your team sit back and, pat each other on the back and kind of take pride in what has actually been achieved to date? And, I think it's fair to say that the IMMAF brand has reboosted and has sort of put a fresh infusion into the amateur end of MMA. It's made things more exciting, especially in terms of looking at the European Championships as the World Championships. Especially, I can only talk from our experience over here in Ireland, but I remember the first couple of times, like Team Ireland, that there was an official Team Ireland. They were heading to the Europeans, they were heading to the World Championships. It was something that we had only experienced before with Conor in the UFC, and also in other sports like football, like hurling, where we were able to say, there's a Team Ireland going out there to represent the country. And obviously with boxing as well, we obviously have Team Ireland as well. But, does that fill you and the team with pride, knowing that you're starting to put this kind of vigor into different countries, having their teams, having the kind of representative body, and going out and performing in a sport that we all love?
I tell you what, Lydia, it's a really amazing thing to see when you see all the teams come together from all over the world to our championships. It's just an amazing thing to see, and it fills you with pride. And that's when you really realize, when you see how much it means to the athletes when they're on the rostrum and you can see them receiving their medals, and the tears are running down their faces, and the national anthem is playing. You can really see what it really means to the athletes, what it means to the national federations, and it does give me an amazing amount of pride and satisfaction to see how far we've come in such a short space of time. In terms of sitting back, anybody that knows me knows that I'm not that kind of person that will sit and put my feet up, and I'm not going to let anybody else in my team do it either. If I'm working hard, they're bloody well going to work hard as well. I'm going to keep pushing them, and until we get to where, even when we get to where we want to be, we're still going to keep pushing, because we don't want to be caught up by the competition. And if you want to stay ahead, you've got to keep evolving and keep pushing forward, and that's what we're going to keep doing. But there's a hell of a lot still to do, a hell of a lot we want to do. The youth championships, which we had for the first time last year, that was the first time we'd had kids fighting in an IMMAF championship, age 12 to 17 years. That was just amazing. The skill level of those kids was incredible. And all the parents were there, and the relatives, and the level of sportsmanship was absolutely amazing. And our event was cutting edge, insofar as we were the only combat sport for youth that didn't allow headshots. There are no headshots in our under 18 events. You can't kick to the head or hit to the head, no ground and pound. So it was really amazing, and it worked incredibly well. We had 25 countries and just under 300 athletes. And I think the intent to compete, which we put out before every event, we had more than 500 athletes say that they intended to compete in this year's event, which unfortunately has had to be postponed. But we would have had more than 500 athletes competing this year. Good news is we've been in talks with the UFC, and who, as you know, have been a sponsor of the IMMAF since we started, and they're really supportive, I've got to say that. And they want to bring our World Youth Championships to Las Vegas in 2021. So that's an exclusive for you.
Wow.
The IMMAF Youth World Championships will be in the fight capital of the world in 2021, July.
Incredible. I mean, not only for the sport, not only for the development of the sport, of the athletes, of IMMAF, but what an incentive for the youth. You know, what an incentive to get to experience that. You know, it's something that people like Conor McGregor, I always go back to Conor, you know, because he was at the pinnacle of the sport, is that, you know, and he always says it, I never had that growing up. We didn't even know what we were doing really when we started. You know what I mean? In terms of like the MMA and the format. And now to see how far it's come along and to have that for the youth is absolutely incredible.
Yeah. And those youth will stay with us for 10 years. You know, we're going to bring them through to senior level. And that's the, you know, that athlete performance pathway is what we're putting in place, which is going to help people like the UFC in the future as well. This is where the champions are going to come from. Absolutely.
Absolutely. If there was one hope for the future, what would it be? In a perfect world, how would you envision everything going?
IMMAF, recognised by the International Olympic Committee, and the vision which was presented to me when the first day I started with IMMAF is we want to be an Olympic sport. And I don't know when that will happen, if it will happen in my lifetime, but you know, that's the vision and that's the dream. It'd be great if it were to happen in 2028 in Los Angeles, which is where I went to my first Olympic Games in 1984, which was a lifetime ago.
Wow, I was born that year.
Yeah, there you go. I'm giving my age away now. But it'd be great. It'd be amazing if I could go back to Los Angeles as the CEO of IMMAF at the Olympic Games, the place where I first went to the Olympics as a participant myself. That would just be amazing.
When you retired from being a professional athlete, or even during your career, would you have ever envisioned yourself in a role like this? Did you always kind of feel that you would do something within sports?
I never thought that I'd be doing anything like this. I mean, when you're a competitor, you tend not to think too much beyond just being an athlete.
Yeah.
And that's your total focus. You don't think about anything else. You're completely obsessed with and single-minded about your sport and your training, and selfish in some respects. Because you have to be, I think, if you want to reach that top level. It's all about yourself and getting to the top. And then you have to make a lot of sacrifices to do that. But I didn't really start to think about a career beyond sport until I realized that I didn't have very long left to compete. And I left it really late. I got to about 30 years of age and I thought, you know what? I mean, I'm probably in the final year of my life as a sportsman. What am I going to do next? And it's a scary thing when you get to 30 and you've got no career. You know what I mean? You're virtually, and judo isn't a sport that you can make a living from as an athlete. You don't get paid. It's not professional. So you get to 30 and you kind of, well, it's like a new chapter. You're starting from scratch. So you've got to kind of reinvent yourself. And I think a lot of top athletes find that adjustment really difficult. That's why you hear about a lot of mental health among athletes, because they haven't prepared for a life beyond sport, because you're young and you think it's going to go on forever. You know, you think that's going to be your life all the time. And then reality hits you. And then, as I say, you have to close that chapter, really, I think, and then open a new one. You have to re-educate yourself, go back to school, do whatever you need to do to create a new chapter of your life and just build it
Mm-hmm.
from there. And it's hard. It's a struggle, especially if by that time you've got responsibilities and family and kids and all the rest of
Mm-hmm.
it. It could be a real struggle. But, you know, I got lucky, I think. I stayed involved with judo. I became a member of the board of directors, and then I became elected as the chair, and I stayed there until London 2012. And I was, at the same time, in parallel to that, I was 10 years working as a sports director for the European Judo Union, which was absolutely amazing time in my life. And then I stepped down from British Judo, and I had a couple of years of basically just wondering what to do next when this opportunity came along,
Mm-hmm.
which has just been amazing. I absolutely love being involved with MMA. Love
Mm-hmm.
the MMA community. Love the people that I've met and the federation representatives. Our board of directors are incredible people. Every one of them a personality, a character. And yeah, it's just amazing. And the staff that I'm working with, as I said earlier, are so dedicated, so committed. You know, you can trust them to just get on and do what they need to do. They're amazing.
Absolutely.
I'm the luckiest CEO in sport.
Oh,
Guaranteed.
we're jealous.
Yeah.
It's good to hear. It's good to hear that. It would be a terrible thing if you came on saying that you hated your job. Densign, while we were chatting, everyone has an opportunity to send in questions that they might want to ask you at the end of the interview. So I'm just going to go in and have a look now and
Sure.
see what everyone wants to ask. So Ale Divriello has asked, when is the next confirmed tournament? I know you obviously spoke about the youth championships that are going to be in Vegas next year, but do we have a date for anything sooner?
We did. We had to cancel the events we had planned.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we now? We're in June. We probably we should have been in South Africa for the Africa Open in April. I think in May or June we were going to be in Kazakhstan for the Asia Championships. Mm-hmm. And we also had a Pan America Championships planned in Mexico, and that had to be cancelled as well. Now the other date we had was for the World Championships, which were scheduled for October in Kazakhstan. And we're still in regular contact with Kazakhstan. We're trying to get updates about where they are with how the virus is and how it's being managed by the government and so on. But you know, I think their preference is to postpone the World Championships until 2021. And I kind of agree with them. I mean, it'd be great to get an event in this year, but I think safety is the most important thing. And when you think about, you know, where we are with the lockdown in other countries, the fact that, you know, so many people have been unemployed. And remember, a lot of our athletes are self-financing themselves to get to our events. So if they've not been working, they haven't earned any money. They haven't been training. They may not even be able to travel. When you take all of these things into consideration and the fact that we are now going to have to think about how we manage the disease and athletes coming to events to protect everybody, we need to have some kind of medical protocol in place to tackle the COVID-19 virus. And the cost of that could be astronomical. I know what it costs for the UFC to put those medical protocols in place for the show that they've done recently. There's no way IMMAF could afford to do that. And remember, our event is not on one night. It's a 7-day event.
Yeah.
You know? So that's the difference. So to be honest with you, I can't give a definitive answer today. We're monitoring the situation. I mean, if coronavirus ends in the summer, maybe we could have a World Championships at the end of the year. Maybe we could. But I wouldn't want to have a World Championships that was less than the World Championships that we've had before.
Yeah.
Where we've got, 400 athletes and more than 50 participating nations. I wouldn't want to have a World Championship where we only had 10 countries show up and a couple of hundred people to fight. I don't think that would be fair to Kazakhstan, especially for the amount of investment that they're putting into these championships. It wouldn't be fair to them. So I'm sorry that I can't give a more concrete answer, but
no,
we're monitoring the situation.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Let's see. Siobhan O'Leary has asked, I've always noticed that the level at IMMAF championships is very high. Do fighters have to go through some process to get admitted?
I think the standard is very high because of the quality of the athletes that are participating from the various national federations. And it's the work that the national federations are doing with their athletes and how well they're training and preparing them for championships. And a lot of our federations have selection events, really rigorous selection events for people to, be selected to take part in the World Championships. Of course, we have a world ranking system as well. So people get points from participating in IMMAF continental events that I've mentioned before. And then that places them, that gives them a ranking on the world ranking list. And then we prioritize the top 32 because we're only allowed to have 32 athletes in the category. So we give priority to the top 32 that are on the world ranking list. So obviously, we want the world ranking list to be the criteria. That's the tool that we would want to use to decide who could take part in the World Championships, because we can't have more than 32. But obviously, we've got 100 countries. So at some point in time, the world ranking list is going to become even more critically important in terms of who can participate in the World Championships. There is opportunities at the moment still for countries to put 2 athletes in to the World Championships in the same weight category. But in the future, we may have to we may have to not do that anymore because we want to have the top 32 countries taking part rather than countries doubling up on the number of participants that they put in to the championships.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's have a look. Let's take one more. Oh, this is a good question. Dane Smith has asked, you as a gold medalist, Olympic gold medalist, what advice would you give to young athletes trying to achieve world championship status in MMA?
Well, I think there's no substitute for hard work. A lot of people ask, what's the secret of other people's success? And, anybody who's successful will tell you that there is no secret. It's just down to hard work, and you've got to stick at it because you will have disappointments and you can't walk away just because you've had a setback. You've got to have that ability to bounce back and work even harder. Because everybody loses sometimes, and you learn. You should learn from your disappointments, learn from your losses, and then come back a better athlete. And that's what we used to do in our judo club. We used to spend hours and hours and hours drilling and drilling and drilling things over and over again. I mean, training is really monotonous at times, really boring, just doing the same thing 1,000 times until it sinks in here, until it becomes automatic. And that's what you have to do. It's really monotonous. It's really boring. Sometimes you're working in isolation. You're by yourself. You've got no company. It's really difficult, but that's what makes a difference between, someone who's a champion and someone who's not. I mean, I actually, Um, I spoke when I was a young athlete. I was talking to a coach from Israel, and he said to me, "Densign, do you know the difference between someone who's a champion and someone who is not?" And he said, "Well, the difference is someone who's a champion can always give you a reason why they need to train, and someone who's not a champion can always give you a reason why they can't,
Wow.
because it's too cold or it's raining, you know, or you know." They've got a stiff neck or whatever. They've got an injury or something. We used to train through injuries all the time. All this modern sports science we didn't have in the 80s. You just got on with it. You know, you dislocated your finger and you just put some tape around it and got on with it.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been to national squad training sessions for judo, and now they've got all these doctors and physios there, and guess what? There's a queue of people waiting to be seen by the physios and the doctors when they should be on the bloody mat training.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Well, I'll add on to that, Densign, because I'm so far. It's not very often you get to speak to an a gold medalist. But when you were training, did you set small goals for yourself, or was the goal always Olympic gold? Was that always something that you were striving for?
Yeah, I mean, just to correct you, I didn't win Olympic gold. I was a participant, and I didn't win a gold medal in the Olympics. But
my apologies. I thought you had won a gold.
No, I finished in 5th place in '84 and '88. I did win gold medals in other international events, but not the Olympics. Yeah, I mean, my focus was always on that was my dream. My dream was to be an Olympic champion. That was the thing that drove me. You know, every day, that's all I thought about. You know, and that's what motivated me to keep on training, keep going.
And then when you achieve that, is it as expected? You know, when you've worked that hard and you work towards to achieve, to win that gold medal, and it does happen, is it as you expect it, or is the feeling different? Is it a better feeling, or is it an underwhelming feeling?
It's an amazing feeling. It's such a high, you know, and you feel as if you're walking on cloud 9. You know, it's just an amazing feeling. But then you have to put it behind you again. You have to say, right, I've achieved that. I've done that. Now I have to go back to work. I have to keep training again because I have to think about the next event, because you're only a champion for one day.
Yes. If you had to finish the sentence, very last question, the key to success is?
Hard work.
That'll do. That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. That was a great chat. Very informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. I really appreciate you giving me the time on your platform.
Anytime, anytime. It was really great. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And continued success. I look forward to hearing details of the next championship and best of luck with the MMA as a sport campaign. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I hope we see you at one of our events.
Absolutely. Yes. I would love to be there. 100%.
You have an open invitation from me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's lovely to hear. Thank you, and God bless.
Cheers.